Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Austin from awfulmedia.com, and today we're going to continue our WordPress series. Today's going to be a fun one, and it's going to be a more difficult one because we have a lot to cover in just this little bit that we have to do. We're going to incorporate a featured slider, and I know I said in the last video that we'd probably just use a plugin and get it done easily just like that. But no, we're going to use a jQuery plugin, but we're not going to actually use a WordPress plugin because I just couldn't find one that I could work with and explain what was happening and feel comfortable with it. So what I'm going to do is use the FlexSlider jQuery plugin, and we're going to build our own little slider using that. But the thing is that would take forever for me to do on screen and explain every little thing. So what I have done is I have put together a little package that you can go to awfulmedia.com/WordPress-video-series and go to the bottom of that post and download that. Or just go to awfulmedia.com and go to the top post there and go to the bottom of that post and download it there. Either way, we're going to go over how to use that. All it is the code in a simple text document that we're going to be placing in our theme. It's the files we need. It's the FlexSlider CSS sheets. It's the jQuery we're going to need for the slider to actually function. And it is the images, or just the image, that we're going to be using for our testing. That's all it is. And I'm going to show you how to put that in your theme, how to get it to work, and then explain the code. Go over the WordPress loop, go over what we're doing with our post, how we're bringing in the title, the content, the thumbnails, things like that. So that's going to be cool. I hope nobody's going to get mad at me for doing it this way, but it's just going to save so much time, and it's going to make it where it's a lot less likely for somebody to break it and then not know why, because it's already wrote for you. I'm just going to explain how it works so you know what's going on, so you can go in there and change stuff if you need to change stuff. And it's going to save you a lot of time because, I mean, these videos are getting ridiculous. We're in number 9, and they're averaging probably like 15 minutes of video, and we're just now getting to the body content of our index page. But it's because of these sessions that I'm just sitting here talking to you for a second. But I want to make sure you understand what's going on and not just throw stuff at you and say, there you go. So anyway, let's get into it. What we have to do is go to awfulmedia.com, and then we're going to go to this top post, WordPress theme tutorial. When we go here, we're going to go down to the very bottom of all these videos, and there's the CSS reset that I said you could find on the website. And well, there's the download source files button, but I did not seem to post the other one yet. Okay, and now with a simple refresh, we should have the link there for us to use, maybe, hopefully. Okay, there it is. Download slider files, and then click download slider, and you'll get this RAR file. We have inside of that a square slider folder. Inside of that we have an image folder, a JavaScript folder, a FlexSlider CSS sheet, and then the code.txt. So we're going to be using all of this, and this is the README file for the license behind the FlexSlider plugin. So make sure to read that if you have any questions about the licensing for the plugin, which you probably don't. But what we have to do is copy over these files and folders into our website folder, and then we're going to place some code in our theme. So in our website folder, or in our theme folder here, I'm going to drag in the image folder. I'm going to merge that with our image folder. And then I'm going to drag over the JavaScript. Wow, JavaScript, okay. And then I'm going to drag over the FlexSlider.css. And that's all the files and folders we have to bring over. Now though, we have to open up this. Let's open up a notepad here. Basic old notepad. And it's got some text in here I placed for you to follow along if you weren't watching the video. But we have CSS that we have to put in our CSS file. We have the HTML and the PHP here, which I'll explain all of this in just a bit. And then we have the jQuery that we have to put in our footer. So let's get started. Let's first bring in the HTML and PHP. So I'm going to go into the index.php file, and I'm going to paste that in. Now, I'm going to go ahead and explain what's going on here before we go any further, so you'll have an understanding of what's actually happening. First thing is a section tag. The section tag is an HTML5 tag that just says this is a section of a document, a significant section. And our section is going to be the section that goes around the FlexSlider, our content slider. Inside of that we have a div with a class of FlexSlider. That's just the default div for the FlexSlider, and I just left it in there so we could just use it like it is. We then have an unordered list with a class of slides. That again is the default class, or the default UL for FlexSlider. That's how it styles it from the FlexSlider.css. So we left that in there. And then we have some PHP, probably the most confusing looking PHP we've worked with this far. So let's go over what's actually happening here. This is what's called a loop. A loop in any kind of programming language pretty much does the same thing. So if you're familiar with PHP or Java or just straight up any kind of programming, you probably have an idea of what a loop does. But for those who don't, I will explain it to you right now. The first thing we have is an opening PHP tag. Nothing confusing there. The next thing we have is a query posts function. That means it's going to query the posts that we have stored in our database, and it's going to query them based on the arguments or the values we have stored inside of the function itself. So nothing too confusing going on there. We're just querying posts. Inside of that we have an array. Now an array, as I said in the last couple videos or whenever it was, an array works the same way as it does in any mathematics. We just take an array and then we store something in it. And it's not really just like a variable, but an array can store multiple values in a single thing. We're using just a single dimension array. So we're saying inside the array, category name. That is a specific WordPress term, category name. So that's something we have to be specific with, category underscore name. And then we're saying that is featured. So that's what we're going to grab. We're going to grab the category name of featured. This little symbol right here is just saying, make this that. Simple as that. And then we're having a comma, which means we have another value we want to pass into this array. And then we're saying the posts underscore per underscore page. So we're saying we want to list this many posts per page. So how many slides in this case do you want to bring into this slider? In our case, 3. We want to bring in 3 posts in this slider. So posts per page is 3. Okay, so make sure you have the query posts, and then you have the parentheses for that function, which will end way over here. Inside that you have an array with the parentheses that wraps around the values we defined, that ends right before this one ends. I hope I explained that right this time. I know I kind of slacked off the last time we used an array, but that's how the array works right here. Next, we have a conditional. It says if something happens. And again, in any kind of programming language, you have this. This is a very key component to any kind of function, any kind of program you're trying to write. So what it's saying is if something happens, then we have to do whatever follows. And in our case, we have a few conditions inside of this if. So first of all, we're saying if have posts, which means if we actually have any posts at all. It's going to check our database and say, yeah, we have some posts. So if it has posts, then it's going to continue on. And it's going to say while posts still exist pretty much. So while have posts, so it's going to do this for as long as there's a post we haven't done yet. So if we have posts, grab all those posts and run through them one by one until we're out of posts. And then grab the post information for us to use down the line inside of this WordPress loop. So if we have any posts left, continue on with the post information. So if have posts while posts exists while there's a post we have not used. Grab that post's information and we'll use it later on. I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's very important to understand the function of the WordPress loop. And then below that, we have an LI, list item with the class of featured game. Featured game will correspond to the classes defined in the CSS we'll place in our theme in a little bit that I supplied in the files you downloaded. Right here's the CSS, or no, right here's the CSS. So that'll correspond with that. And then I'm using another PHP tag, and it says the post thumbnail. That's a function that is grabbing the post thumbnail. Again, what's happening is we're looping through all of this stuff, right? We're looping through here. The loop starts here and ends here. You may think, well, there's only one set of information inside that. Well, what's happening is whatever's inside of this loop will repeat as many times as you have posts. So if you have 5 posts, this will be repeated 5 times, 1 for each post. So you have one that repeats for your first post, then another one will repeat for your second post, bringing in the second post information. So 1 post, 1 information, 2 posts, the second post information, and so on. So you don't have to place 5 of these in here if you have 5 posts. Just place 1 and it will repeat as long as whatever you're wanting to repeat is inside of these PHP elements right here. So the post thumbnail is grabbing whatever post our loop is currently looking at. Again, I know it's going to be kind of confusing to understand, but you have to really think about it here because this is very, very important. So we grab the post thumbnail. That's going to place the thumbnail image that we defined in our WordPress post. Okay? What we can do is actually grab a specific WordPress thumbnail. So we want to grab the featured WordPress thumbnail because remember we named it featured in our functions.php last time in our last video. So we're going to grab that specific thumbnail, no other thumbnail except the one with the featured dimensions. Then below that we have a div with the class of caption. Caption is defined in the CSS that we'll be using in a second. Again, it's in the package you just downloaded from awfulmedia.com. And then inside of the div class caption, we have an anchor tag, which is a link with a class of game title. Okay, the game title is in the CSS. Again, we'll be using in a bit. And then another PHP tag. Now, by now, this should make should make some sense. The title, that's a function. All that's doing is grabbing the same post title. So if we're on post 4, if it's running through and it's found 4 posts, it's going to grab the 4th post title. If it's on the second, it's going to grab the 2nd post title, depending on the one it is currently looping through. And then below that, we have the excerpt. We're grabbing the excerpt from the WordPress post. The excerpt is something that WordPress allows you to define, or it defines by itself, depending on what you want it to do, from the content of your post, like the body of your post that you just made. Let me show you something really quickly so you're not too confused about what I'm talking about. If I go to Game Square and I go to the WordPress administrator panel and I go to posts, I have made 2 posts in here to test out the slider. If we edit this, this is the title that we're bringing in, the underscore title. Function brings in whatever this is for whatever number post you're on, and this is the content of the post. And WordPress will either let us define an excerpt or define one for us, again depending on what we want it to do. So it's going to grab the excerpt from this content. Again, this is very, very short content. This would be the body content, so you'd have paragraphs or whatever inside of here. But that's that. So the excerpt, and below that we have an anchor tag with a class of play now. Again, that's a class that we defined in the CSS that you just downloaded with play now. Then we end the caption div and end the list item div. Now all of this will repeat the number of times you have posts. I'm trying to drill that into your head if you don't get it by now. Then we have another PHP tag that says end the while. So we're going to end while. Remember, whiles are right here. So end the while and then end the if, which is right here. And then we're doing a function that says WordPress underscore reset underscore query. What that means is going to reset posts. We're going to change query posts back to default, back to normal, because we define these in here. It's going to reset that back to nothing because we're done with the loops. The loops are done, and it's going to go back through and do it all again over and over and over and over and over and over until we're out of posts. Simple as that. This is, of course, a very simple method. There are more efficient methods to do it if you have more knowledge of PHP or WordPress, but that's for more of an advanced tutorial. This is the very basic, but it works fine for what we're trying to do. So that's it for the HTML, for the PHP bits. What we have to do now is bring in our CSS. So we're going to go into, and go to the right spot here, into our style.css. Come down here right before this media query, and we're going to paste in this CSS. Control S. And I want to go down to the bottom of this document, and I'm going to grab these jQuery scripts right here. Go into our footer.php, enter down, and paste that in. I'm going to line that up a little better. Okay, in this jQuery, first of all, we have a script tag up here that is just bringing in the jQuery.flexslider.javascript. And we're using the blog info template URL, so it goes to our template URL on our website, then into the JavaScript folder, which would be right here. Inside of here, we have that. Don't kind of ignore that for now. We may use that later on, though. And then we have another tag here. Inside of here, we are loading the FlexSlider, and we're setting the animation to slide. As simple as that. This is the default FlexSlider JavaScript. And then in the style.css, I want to explain what's going on in here. You may be able to just look at it and tell, but I want to explain just a little bit. Featured gain, that is the wrapping tag for our thingy over here. Featured gain, here it is. It's the list item. I was confused for a second. Position is set to relative. It wanted to position itself relative to the flow of the content. Z-index is set to 1 because we're going to have the caption above it. Let me refresh this real quick. Keep forgetting to save my stuff. Okay, here we go. When I refresh it, you'll see that you have a decent looking slider. I'm sorry I kind of rushed the styling for it. And it is functioning properly. We have this is the title and this is the second game. Those are both my posts. So it brought in both posts with the correct titles, the correct description, and the correct thumbnails because I didn't have any more thumbnails to use at the time. So look at that. Ain't that cool? You're welcome. Okay, but so what that is the one says it's going to be pretty much the furthest back, so you can put stuff on top of it. This is 3D space we're talking about here. Z-index is 3D space, so we're putting it at the back, like the back layer, and then we're setting a font family to sans serif. Then the caption, the class, that's the black here. That's kind of encasing all of our descriptions and stuff. Position is absolute because we want to place it at a specific location. 15 pixels off the top, the right, and the bottom. The padding is set to 10 pixels. The color for the font's white. The width is 40%, so 40% of our slider. And this slider is responsive, and I have done the styles to make it work pretty good for a responsive website. So we'll get into that in just a second. Background is black. Opacity is 0.6, so you can kind of see the image behind it. Line height, font size. Z-index is 2, so it goes above this one. Game title, just some basic font styling, text description, or decoration, none. It is set to block, so we can add some block elements or some block styles to it. 10 pixels on the bottom margin. The visited link for the play button is white, as well as the link on the title of the game that we don't have yet, but we will. Feature game play now. Text line center, doesn't really matter. Background color. Now that's pretty basic stuff. Again, position is absolute, so we can place it at the bottom right of our container. Boom. Then we have a media query, only screen and max width 767. So what's happening here is once it gets down to a certain point, we're setting the caption to fill the screen of the slider and then upping the opacity by 1. So what's actually happening? Let's have a looky here. When we go down, nothing, and then boom. So what's happening is we're filling this slider with 85, what did I say? Something like that, % of the slider. That way we can fit all of our description in there, our title and everything, without cutting off stuff. And it does the same thing right there, but it gets rid of the description because our slider's not going to be this high. Again, I said in the last tutorial, the dimensions we defined for our images were just dummies. So it's not going to be this tall of a slider, so you won't have this much room in there. But then when you get right down to it, it looks just fine on a very small screen. And our navigation still works. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? And then in here we say display the paragraph, which is the excerpt, is none once you get down to the certain point. Again, that's how you make the description or the title or anything like that disappear. You just set it to display none at a certain resolution. Okay, so I just got off the phone. I don't remember where exactly I was, but I believe we just finished the CSS. So I think that is pretty much it for our featured slider. Be sure to go to awfulmedia.com to download the files. Also, you may want to set your submenu to a higher z-index than your slider, so it will go over your slider, just like that. And that's pretty simple to do. I came right inside of this style we defined earlier on and set the z-index to 3. I'm just using increments of 1 for each z-index level I want to use. So 3 is higher than 2, which is higher than 1. Haha, counting. So there it is. We've done the slider. That's pretty much it for this video tutorial. Next time we will probably fix mistakes I made in this video. No, we'll probably just continue on. Maybe make some stuff over here and some stuff down here. And you know, just continue on. I don't really know, to be honest. I do know that we have a lot of work to do, so do subscribe if you want to see some more, so you'll be informed when a new video is released. Follow me on Twitter if you want to. I don't talk too much on there, but I talk when something's important to talk about. And like the Facebook page, facebook.com/awfulmedia. Have any questions? Leave a comment on this post or on the awfulmedia.com post about this video, or email me at austin@awfulmedia.com. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.